Welcome to Season 1, Episode 16 of PuckHeads Insider Report. My name is Ed Combs here in South Florida. My co-host, Peter South in Windsor, Ontario. If you have any questions on your favorite team, send them off to us, puckheadsinsider@gmail.com. Check out our Facebook page, Puckheads Insider Report. Please hit like, please hit subscribe, reach out, let us know what you think of our show. Today's show is brought to you by the Florida Grow House. Have you ever thought of your own greenhouse? Here's your chance to get one. Have your own healthy, organic, fresh, and delicious fruits and vegetables. It's fun, relaxing, and a money-saving opportunity to get food in your own backyard. Just go to FloridaGrowhouse.com or call 772-249-2095. Mention you heard this ad on Puckhead's Insider Report and get yourself a $750 discount. Today's show is the East Division leading Boston Bruins. So, Peter, what do you say we get started? How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. How about yourself, Ed?
Well, I'm enjoying this Florida sunshine. How are things up in Windsor? You got a lot of snow still on the ground?
Oh, yeah. Way too much. It'll be there for another month or so. And, we just got to deal with it.
You're ready for it to be over, right?
About 3 months ago.
Yeah, well, it's been a chilly 78 here today, so we're dealing with that hardship as well. So
I'm really feeling bad for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Really feeling bad.
I think about you when I go outside in short sleeves. But anyway.
Yeah.
Boston Bruins leading the East, as is to no surprise to anyone when you have the likes of Patrice Bergeron. Oh, gosh, the guy I hate the most. Brad Marchand. Charlie McAvoy, and a great supporting cast, including the NHL's third star of the week, David Pastrnak. What do you think of how these guys are doing? Do you see this team continuing like they are?
They are a very top-heavy team. I mean, you look at that line of Bergeron, Marchand, and Pastrnak. Pastrnak just got back from injury. He had that hip surgery done. He's been absolutely on fire since he's got back. 9 games, he's posted 14 points and 9 goals. I mean, that's phenomenal. Your buddy who you don't like, I got to tell you, he plays such a well-rounded game. Yeah, he's a pain in the butt. But, after 16 games, he's got 20 points, 9 goals, 11 assists. I mean, he kills penalties. He's on the power play. He logs just a ton of ice. You know what? I mean, he's just a little taller than you, a couple, 3 inches taller than you at 5'9". So he's just a little ball of hate, we don't want to give him that name. That's already spoken for. So. Yeah. And then you got Patrice Bergeron. I mean, what can you say about him? He's 35 years old. He looks like he's 25. He skates like the wind. He's got fantastic hands. His vision seems to be almost unparalleled. And he just knows where to go. He knows where to move the puck to. But, the thing is, I was talking to a friend earlier today about the Bruins. And once you get past that line, they're a pretty AVG, pretty average team. If they come up, especially in the playoffs, against a team that has a strong checking line and a even stronger pair of D-men that they can throw at Boston, if you shut down that top line, you're going to shut the Bruins down for sure.
Why hasn't anybody done it yet?
That's early. I think everybody's still in that feeling out process, even though, I still like the Flyers in that conference. Yeah. Obviously none of the Canadian teams, Toronto or Montreal, haven't played Boston yet. That wouldn't happen till the playoffs. And, none of those Western teams either, Vegas, Colorado. I just don't know if Boston's been tested as much as they should. I mean, Florida and Philly are basically looking like the two main, and Tampa, of course, once they get back from COVID protocols. But, those 4 teams are going to be the battle. And, of course, Washington's a wild card, too.
Do you see Washington, Philly, or Pittsburgh giving them any kind of headache? I mean, I know it's a luxury and a curse to play only the teams in your division, so you're not tested when it comes to playoff time on who you're playing because you haven't played them all season. You are correct. 20 points for Marchand. He's helping Boston on the offense. Tuukka Rask's 10-2-1 mark so far. They look like they're poised to take another playoff run. You're talking about how you still think Philly is going to come out of this division. They just got destroyed 7-3 by Boston. You see, is that really their only line for you? I mean, if they can be stopped, Boston has a hard time winning?
Well, you know what? They got the goaltending. There's no doubt about that. Between Tuukka Rask and Halak, they are solid as you can get between the pipes. I mean, Halak himself, I mean, he's got a well over 925 save percentage this year. Tuukka Rask, we all know it. I mean, his numbers aren't as great as they have been in the past.
Still a 901 save percentage.
He's been getting the Pittsburgh and the Phillies and the Rangers and jerseys and Washington for sure. I mean, I think Washington, they're a wild card team too. You just don't know what kind of team you're going to go Washington. Although they seem to be pretty motivated when they play Boston with that big new defenseman they have on the blue line who has those Boston Bruin roots. But I don't know. I still think you can shut down that top line, and it'll be a close series if somebody can do that.
What type of moves do they need to make at the deadline? I mean, do you see them standing pat or looking for somewhere to make that push, looking for someone to maybe step up their number 2 line, their number 3 line, more defense that way? Or do you see them standing pat? What do you see them doing at that deadline?
I could see them trying to make a move to add some more depth. I mean, that move they made a couple years back, adding Charlie Coyle, was a great move. Really helped them in the playoffs and strengthened their third line and their penalty kill. But, they've got Nick Ritchie, who's been playing good. It's a name probably most people don't know. And Matt Grzelcyk, he's been hurt on defense, but he's good. And, of course, Jake DeBrusk. He's kind of like a Marchand-type player without as much skill, but he plays a lot like his dad did. He just goes. Every shift tries to hit whatever he can, and probably got a little bit better nose for the net than his dad did. But depth is something I think they really, really need to address. Like I said, you have a Pasternak go down or Marchand or Bergeron, and they're not as deep as I'm sure they'd like to be. I mean, David Krejci's another top-end center, but he's a number 2, number 3 center. He's definitely not a number 1 center. I do like the way they're playing right now. I just don't know if they can keep it up.
Well, going beyond that, I still think that they've got more offense than just that number 1 line. I still think their second line can hold them out. Krejci's going to be there in the end. He's still a threat every time he hits the ice. Whether or not they make a move at the deadline is yet to be seen. Whether or not they can make a push with what they got, I think they can. I still think that they've got a lot of strength. As much as I dislike Brad Marchand, you're right. The guy does nothing but eat minutes. He gets under everybody's skin. He knows where to go. He knows how to shoot. And when it comes to the offensive zone, his passing is right there. He knows that he's got to get that puck to the net, or he's got to be at the net to make things happen. And he does it game in and game out.
I agree. To a point, Krejci, I think, is actually unlike Bergeron. I mean, they're a year apart. Krejci's 34. I think he's starting to show his age a little more. He's a little more fragile, let's put it that way. And especially in this condensed season, that could become a factor. Getting back to that depth we're talking about with the Bruins, I mean, they've scored 51 goals in those 16 games. 25 out of those 51 goals have come from Pasternak, Marchand, and Bergeron.
Half their goals from 3 guys.
Half the goals. And the other point is, for a team that's 11-3-2 after 16 games, they only have a plus 15 goal differential. They've given up 36 and only scored 51. I mean, they're the best in their division, but those aren't numbers to
write home about. I mean, even Carolina in the Central Division is a plus 19. And you look in the Canadian Division, Toronto is a plus 21. Those numbers are definitely something that's a factor. And like I said, when you're getting half your goals from one line, it's when you're a coach, you're looking at that kind of salivating. You've got video guys studying how to shut these guys down. And it's not so much for the regular season. I mean, if you're a Philly, you're going to make the playoffs and you're going to come up against them. And it's like, okay, let's use this as a learning time. Let's gather all the video and let's figure out a way to shut those guys down. You shut them down, I think you shut the rest of the team down. Right now, we're going to jump into I Bet You Didn't Know. Today's I Bet You Didn't Know is Boston is also known as the Big Bad Bruins. Now, they had a player once take a shoe from a fan and beat him with it. Who was that player? Was it A, Stan Jonathan, B, Mike Milbury, C, Peter McNabb, or D, none of the above? Now, true Bruins fan is going to know exactly who this is, but the Big Bad Bruins had a player once take a shoe from a fan and beat him with it. Was it A, Stan Jonathan, B, Mike Milbury, C, Peter McNabb, or D, none of the above? Stick around. We're going to give you the answer in just a few short minutes. Bruins are 2-1 in their last 3 games, as we mentioned earlier, scoring 7 on the Flyers. The other 2 a bit tighter, 1-goal game and a 2-goal games respectively. What do you see being the strength of the Bruins? What is the biggest weakness of the Bruins? From what I'm hearing so far is you think their biggest weakness is depth. If that's the case, what is their strength?
Oh, definitely their strength is between the pipes. They've got Rask and Halak, and that's, when lines 2, 3, and 4 are on the ice, that's when those guys are forced to earn their paychecks. Obviously, the strength is that first line, and I don't think the Bruins can afford to break them up because I don't think they'll be as effective separately because, again, I'll go back to depth. I don't think they have the quality of players who can play with those guys and be as effective. So they have to leave them together. And it's kind of like the old football, run the ball until they stop us, and then we'll do something different. And I think it's the same with that line, play them until somebody can stop them.
Valid point. Right now, we're going to jump into our mailbag. Today's mailbag is from Charlie, who wants to know, with Bergeron taking over as captain, has it helped or hurt the Bruins? And is he the right guy for this team to wear the C? What are your thoughts?
I think he is the right guy to have the C on that team. The Bruins have had some great captains over the years, and one of the ones who comes to mind to me, especially when I was younger, when they were the Big Bad Bruins, was Johnny Busick. And to me, as a captain, is somebody who is knowledgeable, a leader, kind of like Steve Yzerman too, with that quiet leadership, not necessarily the super rah-rah guy, but when he spoke, the rest of the guys listened. And I think Patrice Bergeron's like that. Like those other guys I mentioned too, he goes out and leads by example. And Bergeron is out there all the time leading by example. And I think he, quietly makes everybody accountable. And I think he makes them a better team. And I think he was the perfect choice as captain for that team. And I honestly think with the departure of Chara, it might have solidified the room even more. I'm not saying that Chara was a disruptive force, but he did want a lot of ice time, probably, a lot more than the Bruins were wanting to give him as they transitioned into newer, younger guys.
So you think he's doing well as a first-year captain?
I think he's doing great. Like I said, he's got that quiet leadership, and I think that is one of the strengths of the Bruins right there is his leadership.
Is Chara missed? I mean, the record doesn't show it, obviously, but what about his presence in the room? Is it something that Bergeron is picking up himself? Is he keeping, you were talking about that quiet leadership, that follow me, boys, that Steve Yzerman type of thing where he doesn't talk a lot, but when he does, everybody kind of sits there and listens. Do you think he's just kind of making the transition easy for his teammates, for the organization? Chara was there for a long time wearing that C. How are they transitioning without him? And another big name no longer there who was in St. Louis.
Yes, I know you're talking about Torrey Krug there, Ed. And he is missed. He's developed into a good offensive defenseman. He's not a big guy, definitely not a big player. But he does log a lot of minutes. He puts up a lot of points on the power play, and he is a good puck-moving defenseman. But I think the money the Blues signed him for was not the kind of money that the Bruins wanted to pay for him and for what he brought to the team. Now, getting back to Zdeno Chara, I think they do miss him in a lot of ways. His off-ice routines, as far as keeping in shape, were second to none. And he was a great leader in that respect. I think he was good in the room, but I think to maybe some of the younger defensemen who wanted to play more, your Brandon Carlos, your Charlie McAvoys, who wanted a little more not necessarily want the spotlight, but just wanted a little more ice time. And even Torrey Krug at that time, he was eating up some of those minutes. So I think the Bruin defensemen, I mean, they got some young guys there, Connor Clifton, John Moore. They got some young defensemen who are in the developing stages. But again, they're in the developing stages, although Charlie McAvoy is a pure number 1-2 type defenseman. And
it's not like he's getting long in the tooth already. I mean, he's still a young guy.
23 years old. I mean, they could lock him up for a long, long time. And he's very affordable. I mean, you look at Charlie McAvoy compared to Torrey Krug, I mean, salary-wise, and McAvoy's like a $1.5 million cheaper. Also, I mean, we're going back talking, we're circling around here. You talk about additions the Bruins may be looking for. They have $3 million left in the cap, which a lot of the top-end teams don't even have anywhere near that kind of money left to spend. So the Bruins can make some moves. Like I said, I think they would like to add a little more depth, possibly. I mean, they're not easy to find, but a little more experience on D. Somebody could come in, though, and play that 4-5-6 type defenseman, shutdown type defenseman. And I think that would make them quite happy.
Do you see them adding without subtracting? In other words, do they add without losing a player? Maybe, combine some draft picks or do they have somebody in the minors? Or do you see them trading away somebody with the combination of things to get someone in, or a player for player deal? And if so, who do you see them sending down the road?
You know what? It's hard to say. Obviously, none of their top guys are going anywhere. I could see a Jack Studnicka or a even depending what they got back at Jake DeBrusk, I could see them moving somebody like them. I don't think they want to touch one of their goaltenders because, you saw what happened last year in the bubble when Tuukka Rask had to leave. You want to have two solid goaltenders for you. I mean, you look at the Bruins, they got two number 1 goalies there compared to the Red Wings, who've got two number 2 goalies. So
I don't even know if I'd go that far.
Yeah, well, I mean, it shows up on the standings for sure. But yep. I could see them making a move and having to move some player. I think they want to keep under that cap limit, and just to see what happens, when the real season starts next year too. And you also want to keep some assets available for the waiver draft. You always got to keep that in your mind with Seattle coming into the league next year.
Absolutely. Let's move on to the answer of I Bet You Didn't Know. Today's question of I Bet You Didn't Know. The Big Bad Bruins had a player once take a shoe from a fan and beat him with it. Was it A, Stan Jonathan, B, Mike Milbury, C, Peter McNabb, or D, none of the above? Peter, give us the correct answer.
Well, he certainly didn't do it while on NBC and got himself fired for doing that. But it was Mike Milbury. And if memory serves, it was a game in New York against the Rangers.
Yep. Went right over the glass.
Right over the glass. Well. Yep. Yeah. If our
it reminded me of Slapshot, kind of.
Yeah. You can actually find clips of that on YouTube if you are interested. But Mike Milbury has always been a fiery guy, and it's definitely was true to his character when he was with NBC. So, well,
true to his character, and I think it's more he is one than has it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I don't know, he's a pretty interesting guy to talk to, and like some of those guys, he's got some great stories, and there's no doubt about that.
He was definitely the guy to get straight to the point, doesn't beat around the bush, that's for sure.
Yep.
We've touched on this a little bit, but because of the way the divisions are aligned and that's all you're playing, until you hit the end of the playoffs and it starts getting down to the Final Four, do the Bruins have the current makings of a team to make a run at the Cup this season, or do they need a part or two for this playoff season to be meaningful? Do you see them getting to that conference final or beyond?
I don't think so. Like I said, depth is a major Achilles to them. They need to add a player to strengthen that depth. also, one or two forwards and one or two defensemen. I think they're going to struggle just to get out of their own division. I think to get to the conference finals, they're going to have to face the Flyers at some point. And if they beat the Flyers, it'll be in 7. And if the Flyers beat them, it'll be 5 or 6. And I can see that happening. And I think if they did manage to get to the conference finals, Tampa and Florida, definitely do not discount Florida right now.
They're on top of that division.
They have the makings of a good team. I mean, Tampa's been on the shelf right now because of COVID for a bit, but you can't count the champs out either. They're going to battle whoever wins that division. If Boston has to face them, is going to be in for a real battle.
Before we wrap up the show, we got a couple of other subjects to touch on. Speaking of the Central Division, there's a game coming up Tuesday night, and it's going to be between the two absolute worst teams in that division, with Nashville heading to Detroit for a Tuesday and Thursday contest. I mean, we're talking two teams that not only can't score Detroit's improved their defense, but they're still one of the highest goals against allowed average, especially the beating they took from Florida 7-2. This game, what is the plus for this game? I mean, and to even watch, these guys are struggling to do much of anything correct on both sides in Nashville and in Detroit.
Well, I guess as a fan, you could hope to witness a blackout. If the lights go out, you can, listen to the announcers for a couple of seconds and then they go off the air. And then they put on a best of game for one of those two teams, depending what your city you're watching in. So that would be the best case scenario.
Well, just put Franz Nielsen on waivers, so Stevie's looking to improve in a lot of ways.
No, well, again, Ed, you got to remember the waiver situation this year too. I mean, it's not like in past years where they're looking to part ways with a player. You got to put a player on waivers just to move him back down to the taxi squad. There's been a lot of names going on waivers, and I think it's kind of the unwritten thing now. You don't touch them. You let them go, see what the team does. 99% of the time, they're just being reassigned to the taxi squad to bring somebody else up to have a look and see what they can do. And I think that's the situation with Franz Nielsen.
I think another reason, it may be an unwritten rule, but I don't think the way his production has been last year and the first part of this year, nobody wants that $5.1 million contract.
Yeah, well, for sure. I mean, the salary cap situation is what it is. And you have a lot of teams and, they don't want to admit it. I mean, they're all multimillionaire owners and stuff like that, but still they're making very, very, very little revenue. Even the teams like Florida and Tampa, who have some fans in the stands, they're not making any revenue to talk about. And yet their expenses are still the same, if not more, to appease all these COVID protocols. But Ed, speaking of the Wings, I have a question for you, and I want to know your thoughts on. It was just announced early on Monday that Mike Babcock is back in coaching. He's taken a job up in Canada with the University of Saskatchewan Huskies as their head coach.
Has he really?
Yep. What do you think of that?
Good for him. I really think he's an excellent coach. I think he's one of the last old school coaches. I hated to see him leave Detroit. I really did. But they've all said the same thing in the NHL, just like any other coaching position in professional sports. You're hired to be fired. He ran his years. He did 10 years in Detroit. What happened in Toronto, if you go by what he said, it's a complete misunderstanding. I still think that old school coaching works better, teaching them defense, teaching them to respect. These players today, they don't care. They're not getting shut down the road. They make too much money. And when you make more money than the coach, more money than the boss, they're not going to listen to you. They're not. They've got no respect for you. But to me, grab a player by the helmet and tell them they need to bring back, I will send your ass packed right down to the minors. They need to bring that back. These people, these guys, some of them, they play as hard as they can on a team that wins. This is something we're going to touch on. But I think his style of coaching goes way back to Eddie Shore hockey, eh? So those guys, the Scotty Bowmans, the Mike Keenan types, all of these guys, they were old school. How many times did you see a goalie playing for Mike Keenan in New York, Chicago, wherever it was? They let in one goal in the first period, and what was his nickname? Captain Hook. He got him out. I've never seen more broken goalie sticks on a bench when they got pulled for no reason. He's trying to shake things up, and these old school coaches that's what the NHL needs to me. These players have gotten too baby. They're a bunch of... Now, I don't want to say all of them, but there's a lot of them that, look what happened in Columbus. Oh, he yelled at me for making a bad play. I want out of Columbus. The only guy to have any balls on that team was the guy who screamed at the coach and admitted he was wrong, and Patrick Laine, and deserved to be benched. That's what these players need. They need to be put in their place. They are not the boss. And it's just, I don't want to run off on a rant, but it's going to direct us right into a player. Is it out of the realm? Jack Eichel. They are pathetic. The only team worse than them in the whole NHL is the aforementioned Detroit Red Wings. I mean, is it unthinkable that he may want out of Buffalo no matter what they do? There's no supporting cast, regardless of who they trade for, who they sign in the offseason, who they bring in. Nothing is working. Is it ownership? Is it management? Is it coaching? Is it the players around him? Why can't Buffalo succeed?
Well, that's the other thing with Buffalo. I mean, you've got Taylor Hall, an MVP in this league, playing on the wing with Jack Eichel, and they just can't seem to score. And you got Jeff Skinner there. I mean,
they can't score. Peter, they can't sniff the net. I mean, they're not even close.
I know. I've watched a number of their games, and it's frustrating. Just to watch them, it's frustrating. But it's
what is the reason for stuff like this when you have that kind of talent? Is that coaching? I mean, does it come down to something that simple? Do they need different coaches? He's already gone through 4 coaches and 3 general managers in his tenure, Jack Eichel. How many guys has he gone through?
That is one thing, but I also think it's what you got on the ice. I mean, they have some high end players. You got a Taylor Hall. You've got, like I said, a Jeff Skinner and Jack Eichel. They're making big coin. And, they're definitely not producing like Marchand and Bergeron and Pasternak.
Didn't they bring in a VC from New York? Isn't he up there?
No, he's in Toronto now, and he's just hanging on. And he's hanging on by Buffalo? A thread briefly. And, but like I say, VC's hanging on by a thread right now in Toronto. So I think it comes down to a situation where previous GMs may have over-evaluated a lot of the players. You get in contracts. Sometimes you just, the NHL isn't like the NFL where you can just terminate a contract and it goes away. You get hung up with those. And there's some guys, they Ristolainen on defense. They've been trying to move him, and they can't do it. But, Buffalo's another team we need to talk about. Yeah, exactly. And Buffalo's another team we need to talk about. Goaltending's been an issue there, has been for a while. I mean, they had Robin Lehner there, who seems to have found himself a good home in Vegas. They've had guys come in and go out. And like I say, Taylor Hall, former MVP, he comes in with his own skeletons in his closet. I've watched Taylor play since he's been
in Windsor.
16 years old. Well, before that, coached against him in his OHL draft year. So at 15. So I've seen him play since he's been 15 years old. And, there are some deficiencies to his game. There's no doubt about it. So
let's do a quick comparison. You brought up where VC is in Toronto, and you've got Austin Matthews in Toronto. And look at what management, from Brendan Shanahan down to the general manager, everybody that organization is giving him a supporting cast. And right now, Toronto is going to run away with that North Division, the pace that they're on. You've got a Jack Eichel who can't steal a supporting cast. And I want to get more into this on another show. We'll talk about Buffalo. But when you look at the same 2 teams fighting to get a supporting cast, why is Toronto so successful where Buffalo is going through management, coaches, and players, and it's going to come to a point. Jack Eichel is going to go, okay, get me out of here, because I'm going to tell you what, next season, in 18 months, his no movement clause takes effect. Right now, if they want to move him, they can send him wherever they want. Once that kicks in, Eichel says, yeah, nope, I go where I want. He has full control of his destination.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's another team, and now obviously they're winning more games than Buffalo is. Everybody, like you said, except Detroit is winning more games than Buffalo. But you look at Edmonton, and there is a lot of similarities between Edmonton and Buffalo. You have some high-end star players. You got Draisaitl and McDavid. And then after that, it just drops off. I mean, the goaltending has always been, questionable in Edmonton. The defense is definitely questionable, and the supporting cast is questionable.
But you got a brand new GM there who is a proven Stanley Cup winner.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm waiting to see. I see him making some moves there to help that team. He'll get the supporting cast he needs.
Eventually. And like I said, you got to go back and look at the contracts, though, and what the GM, because that's you got a new GM in Buffalo, too. He's under the same situation. He took over for Jason Botterill, and he's dealing with the contract situations that he's been left with. And I mean, that's the job of a new GM for the first couple of years, is cleaning up the mess you've inherited. But then again, you know what? If that mess wasn't there, you wouldn't have that job. So I mean, it goes hand in hand.
You know what, Peter? We're gonna about wrap this up. I don't want to get too deep into this, because you know what we're gonna do next week? We're gonna do these Buffalo Sabres. We're gonna have a ton of research done and see what kind of connections you got. If you can get a hold of Taylor Hall and anybody in that organization to give you a little snippet of what's going on, or someone we can talk to get a little deeper into what's going on in Buffalo. But we'll do the Buffalo Sabres next week. Sound good?
Sounds great, Ed.
All right, that's awesome. That's going to about wrap up this show. We hope you've enjoyed it. Always remember, any questions on your favorite team, send them off to us at puckheadsinsider@gmail.com or on our Facebook page at Puckheads Insider Report. Please hit like. Please hit subscribe. Today's show has been brought to you by the Florida Grow House. Have you ever thought of your own greenhouse? Here's your chance to get one. Have your own healthy, organic, fresh, and delicious fruits and vegetables, fun, relaxing, and money-saving food in your own backyard. Just go to floridagrowhouse.com or call 772-249-2095. Mention you heard this ad on Puckhead's Insider Report and get yourself a $750 discount. That's floridagrowhouse.com or 772-249-2095. For Peter South, who is in Windsor, Ontario, my name is Ed Combs here in South Florida. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and we look forward to talking hockey again with you next week.